Ed Rankin Jr.
Here.
Paul Bissonnette.
Here.
And Mark Eastman is here. The second item on the agenda is Historical Society.
Thank you.
Okay.
Peter, if you will guide my cane. Oh, yes, sir. And Mark, if you would pass those. Thank you. I'm Gary Bagley, Vice President of the Bucksport Historical Society, back yet again. Before I get into discussion of the main topic, I do want to mention we had a very busy season at the museum this summer. Of those who gave their residence when they signed in, it showed that we had visitors from 40 main towns and cities, 33 states, and 8 foreign countries. Last year, as you recall, we came forward with a plan to move the museum building street level. And we submitted with that plan not cost estimates, but actual quotes from 2 contractors for each phase of moving the building onto a daylight basement. The initial cost to move on, do the 3 walls of the daylight basement and move the building would be $118,000. That would be the basic cost. If it was necessary to move the building backward in order to allow for the construction of the daylight basement, that would add $25,000, making it $143,000. We did not have quotes on finishing the basement because at that point, use of that basement was undecided. But we did have estimates, and the estimate for the finish of the basement, I think, approached somewhere between $145,000, $150,000. We're coming tonight with a revised plan. The plan still entails the movement of the building street level on a daylight basement. But tonight, we're proposing a use for the daylight basement. Bucksport is a town that's very fortunate to have not only a rich history, but Bucksport, unlike many towns, has a hidden treasure. And when I say hidden, I mean it is hidden literally 363 or 364 days a year. And that treasure is the antique firefighting equipment that is stored most of the year in a barn up on School Street, as well as other antique fire paraphernalia. The proposal would be to utilize the majority of the daylight basement to display that firefighting equipment on a year-round basis. It would be fully visible behind glass, and we think it would be an attraction that young and old alike would be attracted to the waterfront to see. Other use of the space, we incorporated in the plan public restrooms, which would allow the town to get rid of the present public restrooms on the waterfront. And there would be space for an information center or perhaps for temporary displays from the Historical Society on the history of Bucksport to be changed every year for viewing on the time we're not open. In short, it will be a win-win-win. It's a win for the Historical Society in that it would address our ongoing ground moisture problem. It would be a win for the Historical Society because it would make it easy to make that building ADA compliant, which we cannot easily do in its present location because of the parking lot. But we have on the front of that building the 2 wide freight doors that, if they were street level, would be easily accessible for people with disabilities. And it would give us greater visibility. It would be a win for our fire department So they could proudly display that collection of antique firefighting equipment and ensure its preservation as well. And it would be a win for the town because we believe that such a display will attract visitors to the waterfront, excuse me, with a spin-off benefit to Main Street businesses. Also, the town would then have additional space on the waterfront to redevelop the footprint where the public restrooms are and the footprint of the location of the museum now. And on the sketch that was sent out, you see on that first page that shows an amphitheater. That is not part of our proposal, but rather is intended to show a possibility, if the building is moved street side, of redevelopment of the waterfront could be incorporated, which I think was, at some point in the past, was discussed, having an amphitheater. We would like to request the committee to give the proposal serious consideration, make a recommendation to the town council, and hopefully the town council would give it serious consideration and a final decision. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Denning. Thank you.
Good evening. A few weeks ago, Larry contacted me and kind of threw around the idea of possibly using the bottom portion of the cemented foundation for some type of display for our antiques. And we've talked about it at the fire department probably for the last 10 to 15 years. We have beautiful equipment, and it's a shame people don't get to see them. Gene Weston worked tirelessly over the years back in the early 70s restoring these. They're beautiful. And it's a shame that they sit up at the station. They get dust on them, and no one really sees them until we get enough people to go up and haul them out for a parade. We're one of the few departments around that have this many of our equipment still. A lot of places don't. Just briefly, the Deluge 3 is a hand tub. It's a 1845. We have a 1855 Button and Company, which was Torrent number 2. We have an 1878 hose cart that Gene started on, and we never got finished. That still needs to be completed. And we have a 1911 Howe, which is a motorized piece, and it was horse-drawn. That was our first motorized fire pump for the town. And it actually ran out of that School Street station, and that's why that station was built, for that piece. And they had 2 horses up there. And we also have, I believe, an 1877, 1878 ladder cart upstairs of that station also. So I just think, at least let's look at this and see. I support it. I know our members do. I think if Gene was still alive, he'd say absolutely. I know Craig Bowden, past chief, he'd be supportive of this. I think this is something focal down there where people can go down and actually see this stuff. And and put lights on it in the evening so people can look through and see that stuff. It's a shame that we don't have anything. We've talked in front of the station by the sidewalks, but it's just not wide enough to put some type of glass encasement to put those out there. But I'd like to see us at least look at it and see if it's feasible. Maybe some offsets, you might be able to get some grants out there. I don't know if the Stephen Tabitha King Foundation might have some grants or other type of grants out there, but I think it ought to be at least looked at.
Would we be able to clean out the School Street station? And maybe
We
consider
could,
selling that
and,
off?
you know, storage is another problem what we have. I have a boat and a UTV. In the off-season, we have to store the boat at the wastewater treatment plant, which they're not thrilled, but they do it for us. We could easily clean that place out and be able to store those 2 units up there. We have all kinds of other memorabilia that you could display down here as well, if this was to be built. Just numerous things. Upstairs of the station is just full of old stuff. So it's pretty neat to see how firefighting was done in those days compared to what it is now. And I would think it would be something people from out of town would come here for. So, anyway, thank you for your
Where was that
consideration.
station built, Mike? Do you know?
Oh, I want to say, just my memory, I want to say it was probably 1906, 1908.
And what kind
Right
of
around
condition,
there.
what kind of condition is that in?
The station, it's in rough shape. I put in the CIP to put new siding, windows, and trim on it. And it was like $19,000. But the problem is trying to get people to volunteer to do it. I think we have enough people that are capable of doing it. It's just, I think it would be a great community event. The station was dedicated to Gene Weston, and before I retire, I'd like to see that station completed, so.
So you wouldn't be interested in selling it off to trade for this situation? Assassinate me later, that's fine, not right now, but later.
Yeah. No, I'd say you should keep that station. That's, just for storage purposes.
Yeah.
Gary, on utilities, I see you got a utility room in here. You plan on heating this building, or?
Not the museum itself.
So the utility is just for plumbing and electrical, but there'll be no heat in the building, so it won't
No,
be able to be.
There's no plans for heating the museum. I also want to mention about the fire equipment. In the design that Larry drew up, the equipment would be on display all year round, but they would have doors wide enough they could get it out for parades. And how many of those are there a year, 1 or 2? It's used in, but no room for horses.
Anybody else in the committee have questions?
So what was the total amount with moving it and finishing the basement?
Well, as far as finishing the basement, that needs to be priced out. Because last year when we came, we had actual quotes and,
Karen, can you just come back to the podium so people want
oh
to
yeah,
TV can watch it?
certainly. We had actual quotes for moving the building street side on a daylight basement foundation, 3 walls. And we had 2 quotes for, the concrete, for the excavation, for the movements, whether one move would do. But probably, I would assume, that, so we asked for a quote, well, what if we had to move it backwards a bit to allow the excavation for the daylight basement, and that would be the extra 25,000. Then Larry did the estimates for the basement, but at that time, aside from the public restrooms, we didn't have a definite plan for use of the basement, but rather came to the town and said, you know, does the town have a use? Because we're not looking to use it. So it would have to be, also, you'd have to update, obviously, the quotes from the contractors from last year. Probably prices have gone up, but really, if we're going to use it for display of the firefighting, that needs to be pinned down on exact cost to do it.
Well, I think it's a big conversation, but it's one I think we need to have because we've talked about this several times, and I think certainly as a committee, but then as a council, we need to decide if we support this philosophically. But I think back to that point, regardless of what we do, it seems to me like this project in total with utilities, even at the minor level, I'm no expert here, but it seems like we'd be pushing pretty close to that $300,000 threshold when we're
We'd
all
be
said and
over it.
done. Yeah.
Well, and that's not counting, again, we've talked about this before, but the town owns the lot.
That's
To the
right.
tune of 250, 300,000,
Yep.
so it's, you know, a substantial shift. Gary, is there any changes to the structure, or is there intent to hire a director or increase the hours?
No. No. We're doing the best we can we're all volunteer, self-sustaining, we do our own fundraising. We are getting new members, but unless we have a substantial increase in numbers to cover additional days, it's where we're at.
Yeah, but if we get 10 years down the road and the numbers don't increase, then we have a building on Main Street that isn't, you know, that may not have the capacity to run any more than it does today. I mean,
Well, I don't think it would be the only empty building on Main Street.
well, I don't think the town wants to own another one that's empty on Main Street, right, in my opinion.
Well, all I can say is that the Bucksport Historical Society celebrates 60 years next year, and it has been maintained and kept going by interested citizens, and most of us are gray heads. That's the way it is, and I think if you look at most historical societies,
I agree.
it is the gray heads. So,
I mean, this did come up in economic development last November or December, and the opinion of that committee was that it was not beneficial the way it was structured to do it.
and that's why we have come back with another proposal and incorporating what I think would be a draw. If you get people to the waterfront, I am convinced there is spillover positive benefit for Main Street businesses.
I just think it's gotta be open for there to be benefit, myself, I mean.
Yes, and it's one of those things, and I think I said this or something along these lines last time. To your point, to each of your points, honestly, presently structured, it's a limited use facility. I'm not saying I'm advocating for this. What I'm saying is that another approach here is that we look at this and say, well, if we're committed to making that part of Main Street something that is better than what it presently is, and we know that the Historical Society has issues with in terms of being able to preserve what it already has there, then do we invest beyond what we're even talking about this evening in order to make that a building that 10 years from now, if it isn't something that's being used as a historical society, can be used as something else, or perhaps even, you know, it can go a number of different directions. I'm not saying I'm advocating for that. What I'm saying is that if we're going to go down this road, I think as a council, we need to decide pretty soon, and I think I've said this before too, I think we really need to decide how far we're gonna go here. I really don't think that we're at we're gonna get to a point where a lot of the things in the historical society are really gonna start to go, for lack of a better term, go bad.
That's
Can't be fixed, can't be recovered. And so if knowing that, what are we going to do to prevent that?
What other options are available? I mean, that, we can't just have one option. I mean,
Right.
it's, there needs to be some discussion about what other possibilities there could be. I mean, for years, we talked about, you and I talked about the Masonic Hall. That went for $150,000. We talked about that as a potential spot, and you didn't wanna get off Main Street, but, you know, at the same time, that would have housed the whole thing for a lot less money, and it would have made you secure and the collection secure. And if the mission is to secure the collection, I don't understand why that's never, the only discussion is this one. You know, I just think there could be other options if there was some reception.
Well, you know, there was floated the idea without ever consulting us about the Legion Hall.
Yeah, that's another possibility.
No, it's not a possibility from our point of view, Mark. Number one, it's in very poor condition. Does the town own the Legion Hall?
No, but we can help facilitate something, Gary. And.
No, well, look,
and if it
it's a
protected
dead
the
issue.
collection, that's fine, but if it protected the collection, that is the
It
goal.
doesn't have the space to accommodate our collection. It's too small, it's in poor condition, there's no parking, and no one would ever find us. You wouldn't have 33 states, 40 main towns, and 8 foreign countries coming to the Legion Hall.
I don't agree, but that's,
Well,
we can agree to disagree.
We agree to disagree on that.
Either way, we need to have this discussion soon, because I think we're going on 3 years of talking about this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask the question, that's the elephant in the room. You've said it yourself, it's a bunch of gray heads.
Yeah.
In 15 years, and I'm just taking a number, hopefully everybody's here beyond that, but who's next to run this? Are we then gonna be looking
People
at
in
some-
your generation's going to be gray heads
Right,
someday.
but
Some of us.
are they, well, not some of us, no. But
Some of us there already.
are they, what are you doing to facilitate, to get folks there?
What, we've had an inquiry from a young man who's in his 40s who plans to join next year, a local resident. Although it's not going to be much help to us. This summer, we had a very unusual visitor. I was there, and this young man, probably late 20s, blonde hair, blue eye, comes over, shakes my hand and says, "Hello, I'm Jonathan Buck." And I said, "Really?" And he was a 9th generation direct descendant from Colonel Buck, named for him, had never been to Bucksport, and lives in San Diego. He loved the museum. He signed up, gave us a check for a lifetime membership, and sent us a treasure trove of information on the California line of the Bucks, which we did not have. We're always trying to recruit new members, and we do have new members, and we have dedicated members. And as long as there's people in this community that treasure the history of Bucksport and want to preserve and present it, I think it's gone 60 years. I see no reason it can't go many more years.
Fair enough, thank
Truthful.
you.
Gary, as far as the structure, we've had organization in town that does strategic plans to try to find a path to some more capacity, and that seems to be the missing step to me here. If we just do this, that doesn't mean it's gonna work. That just means we're gonna have a building that the town's gonna own, that not gonna be on the tax rolls, that may or may not be around here in 20 years. It may not be functioning because, this could be considered somewhere else in the village. I don't think that that's an absolute that it has to be where it is. Look at other towns, look at Searsport, it's like Sears Island. If you look around, they're all over the place. It's not necessarily on Main Street. And that doesn't mean that you can't attract people. I just don't agree.
We'll agree to disagree.
Okay.
Buy us the bank building.
Well, I guess the other point is, we've got a building up there that's already got artifacts in it.
Yes.
I don't know if that one,
I just looked at the lot, it's .07, so that's gonna be a challenge.
okay.
I looked at it too, when that was brought up, but
What was that?
the fire station lot less than a tenth of an acre, so the
Oh.
reality is that's not big enough. But I thought the same thing, but, I mean, it would be nice if there was some ability to have discussions outside of this is it, or we're just gonna let the collection rot.
Well, come back to us with a serious proposal. But you know, it's like the American Legion Hall. We were all shocked to read this was a real possibility. No one ever discussed it with us.
We were making movements to try to find alternatives.
That was from
That's not-
economic development, right? That's
Yeah,
where
that's
that
gone
came
more than
from.
once,
That was
yeah.
in open
Well-
discussion.
With all due respect, I firmly believe we can certainly have more discussion about possibilities. But if you come up with ideas for possibilities, please consult with us.
Okay.
We own the building, and to read in the local paper and having the support of the local paper to move us up to the Legion Hall, quite frankly, did not strike any of us as a good idea, and we wondered why no one had approached us with that thought. So I think we need more dialogue.
Great segue. I do too, and I think really at this point, somebody who is not always the biggest fan of, I'm certainly know the phrase "death by committee," but I really think that we need to consider perhaps some sort of committee of invested people, and not just have this be a continual dialogue between the Historical Society and the Infrastructure Committee or the council itself, and talk this through and find out exactly what the viewpoint is on the Historical Society. Quite frankly, let's call it what it is. It already exists in a pretty valuable real estate, and what we're discussing is to make it more valuable and not have it be on the tax rolls. And if that is, if that's something that as a committee we can drive forward and justify, okay, great. I'm certainly open-minded here, but I just think that perhaps a committee to discuss this and move this forward with some sort of timetable in terms of things will be done. We'll start to have answers here by particular days, perhaps may be the best way to go. Because again,
I'm fine with that, I mean, but in addition to the two committees you discussed, economic development still, there was another segment of the population that had concerns that it wasn't viable to do it where they wanted it done.
Mhm.
Gary, is the paper mill museum gonna hinder the hours of operation?
No, because that's a separate group. It's a working group, primarily from our mill workers,
Okay,
and they are under the umbrella of the Bucksport Historical Society.
okay, but they've
But
got
they-
kind of their own staff.
Their staffing is on their own, does
Okay.
not involve our staffing.
Anything else?
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3, CEO discussion, status of properties with violations.
Mr.
Bissonnette asked for the-
Yes. What would you like me to ask?
No, I said this, we agended this because Councilor Bissonnette, Deputy Mayor Bissonnette had asked for this after the September code officer's report
Yep.
came out.
2 sentences. I've had several people approach me and say, what are we doing about some of these properties? It feels like nobody's doing anything. And then I read your report that's pretty detailed, and I can tell that you're putting in a lot of time working on this property. So I thought it would be just nice if you kind of went through in public session some of the work you're doing so that people could hear exactly what's being invested in some of these problematic properties.
Sure. Yep. Well, so I'll go down through the list. It's a month old now, but so clearly the 1861 State Route 46 is now been demolished, cleaned up. It's out for bid, and you're going to discuss bids later tonight, I believe. So that was a huge win after years of looking at that mess. The Spring Fountain Hotel, we're being held captive by the courts, and until they decide to rule or somebody purchases it. But there's been several interested buyers that had the money and the know-how and were committed to doing it, and then somehow it fell through behind the scenes. So I don't know Nobody's talking as to why it fell through, but it wasn't anything to do with us. 4 Noel Way was a problem for a long time. We've been working on that one. We got the tenant out of there. We got the landlord to clean it up. However, we ran into a sticky wicket where the mess went over the edges of the property line onto the abutting neighbors. And I didn't feel like it was fair to go after the neighbors because they didn't make the mess. I tried to go after the landlord, and the lawyer said that we didn't have the right to do that. So I asked Sue if we could have Public Works go in and clean that up, and they did that. They did a terrific job, and it looks wonderful, and it's much better for that neighborhood. The people are very happy. 80 US Route 1, it's owned by Patrick Chen, but he's currently in Massachusetts. He at one point was going to turn that into multifamily housing till he found out that he was going to have to sprinkler it, and that was the deal breaker, and so it's just been sitting there. The roof is collapsing now. It's pretty poor condition inside. I've ordered it to be demolished, and he's kind of put that off because he thought he was going to sell it. There's a couple people interested in buying that property for business, and he was going to let them deal with it. But that doesn't appear that's going to happen, and I've told him that it needs to be down before snowfall, so he's actively working on getting quotes right now. 1174 River Road's another one where the roof is collapsing. House is, really dangerous. Needs to come down. The owner has been in and out of the hospital all summer long, so while she's trying to cooperate with me, it's been very challenging. I have helped her locate a contractor, and they're supposed to be working out a deal between the two. I tried to get an update from her today, but I couldn't get a hold of her. 214 Church Road. It's still a giant mess. The RV's still there, the piles of trash are still there, and the junk mobile home is still there. But the tenants that were in the mobile home, the RV, and their 8 dogs, are in Orland now, living in a house. The RV's still there. Supposedly, as soon as a tree gets cut up that fell down during the last storm, he's going to get the RV out of there. Then I can go after the owner of the property to get the mobile home and the trash cleaned up. I expect that to be a fight. 233 Church Road. Mobile home moved onto the property without any permits. I issued after the fact permits. It still needs to be put on a slab and tied down, and connected to a proper septic system. Right now, they're going out of the mobile home into the old house, which is in really poor condition, and using the bathroom in there, so it is at least not going on the ground, but it needs to be taken care of, and so I'm still working on that. 595 River Road has an old mobile home in the front yard, no doors, no plumbing or heating inside. That's been ordered to be removed, and the lady has no money, so she was hoping somebody would haul it away for the metal or something, but that hasn't happened. So I'm still actively working on that one. 883 River Road. That is a very tricky one because it's owned by heirs of, and it has not gone through probate. Nobody wants to take it through probate because the state of Maine has a claim on it because of Maine Care that was used at the end of life for the senior that lived there. The grandson has paid some of the taxes and therefore thinks he's entitled to live there and claim residency. He has got issues, and so I've been working with the police department and trying to deal with that. He's been hauled off several times, but he ends up right back there the next day. So that one is, I really don't know what to do. I can't make him do anything, cause he doesn't really have any legal right to it to begin with, but there is no owner, nobody will claim it. But because he paid the taxes on it, we can't take it, so it's a mess. 889 River Road, same same situation, with the exception of that one was foreclosed on by a bank. And the bank company contacting me stated that I would be seeing some corrective action shortly, and I haven't seen it, but here's hoping that that bank is telling the truth. 289 Jacob Up Pond Road. This was a weird situation where they had compost piles that were stinking up the neighborhood with dead animals in it. Chickens and turkeys, not domestic animals. But they weren't being composted properly, wasn't being dealt with properly, and it turned into a bit of a fight, but eventually the mess was cleaned up and moved. I do see there is a new compost pile there started within the last week. Hopefully that one won't have animals in it and won't smell, but we'll see. 41 Town Farm Road. That was, there were complaints that was becoming a junkyard. He cleared a big portion of his property and had unregistered vehicles in all different areas of the property, so it did look like he was getting ready to really open up a full-on junkyard. I've talked with him, he's cooperating, he's removed a lot of the vehicles. He does have an automotive business there. He was storing stuff that he thought he was gonna use later. I says, you can't do that. And he's working with me. 222 Turkey Path. This one's been going on for years. It's better. For those of you that have been out in that area, there was a truck right up on the shoulder of the road that was, there was no way the town could plow around that. There was junk cars everywhere, piles of metal and junk everywhere. When I told him I was taking him to court if it wasn't cleaned up, I finally got some action from the mother, not from the man who lives there. She turned in receipts from 8 different trips to the recycling place with over 16 tons of metal that had been taken there, hauled off. And yet, if you look at the site, there's still 4 junk cars and there's still piles of scrap metal, but it is way better. So I haven't filed a court document yet. I'm hoping that I can convince him to just go that little bit further and get that finish cleaned up. But it is way better, and the stuff that was on the shoulder of the road's gone. 264 Central Street. I've been getting complaints about this for years. I've been trying to work with him. Thought we made some progress back in the spring with him and his uncle, and it just hasn't progressed like he said it would. There's still a junk car out behind the house. There's 4 in the driveway. That's in the compact zone of the town, so it's not allowed to have any junk cars. He's refused to comply, so that one is going to court. He was supposed to be served this week. I don't know if he has been or not. Court date's November 1st. 233 Central Street was another one that was just an absolute mess. Way worse than what you would see from just driving by on the road. You could tell it was an issue, but you had no idea. The property owner lived in Michigan. His daughter was living there, and he had no idea that this is what had become of the property. Luckily, there was a stepson that lives in a neighboring town, and when he found out about my efforts to get it cleaned up, he stepped in, explained to his father what was going on. The daughter's now out of the house. They've had roll-offs in there left and right, and they've been getting stuff out of there. It's much improved. I'm hoping that the neighbors are pleased, because they were really upset. They were getting rats, and it was really bad. 211 Central Street, that one went really smooth. I sent him a letter, explained he had junk cars in the yard, and he cleaned it up. 396 Central Street's an ongoing mess. The yard isn't so bad, but the house had a fire last year. Well, it might be a year and a half ago now. It's technically owned by Mary Good. Of course, Ken passed away. Mary and Matt moved down to Alabama, but they still own the deed, even though this fella that lives there paid a bunch of money to buy it. He didn't finish the contract or something, so the deed never got transferred. It's a messy situation, but there's no plumbing, there's no heat, no electricity. They're not supposed to be living there because of the fire damage, and it was bad enough that he was there, but now he's moved out and he's sub-renting it. So I've reached out to Mary multiple times. I'm not getting any response. So that may end up having to go to the lawyer too. I don't know. I can't keep letting them live in there like that. I'm gonna keep going, or have you heard enough?
How many more you got left?
How long do you have?
You need to leave him
Um,
enough for the ambulance.
I know what you get. I think you're okay.
561 Millvale. That one is, we skipped that one. 684 Millvale, that one was condemned. There's holes in the roof. There's been no plumbing at that house for multiple years. The house is literally full of, and the problem was that people had some disabilities. And so I couldn't just tell them, hey, you have to get out of there, because they just didn't understand. I called Adult Protective Services multiple times. I've been dealing with Adult Protective Services for a year, and they didn't do anything. And I finally got help from Home Co-op, Tracy Hare. And they sent a team over there, people that are trained to deal with people like that. They were kind, compassionate, spoke to those people, convinced them to come with them to a shelter, got them clean clothes and showered and put them in nice warm beds and with plumbing that they haven't had in 2 years. And supposedly, last I checked with Tracy about a week ago, they're doing really well. The home was bought by somebody at auction for $50,000 unseen, and they've got a surprise coming to them when they get inside. I've told them it needs to be bulldozed. They think they can clean it and fix it and flip it. We'll see.
Should we stop there and give the ambulance time?
Sure.
Thank you. Lou.
Thank you,
I
Luke.
got many
yeah.
more.
We
If you
get the
want me to come
point, you've
back.
been busy.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the fact that you, A, are working with people whenever you can, but that you are aware of
I've
the
been in
multiple
all but
issues.
one of those, and I appreciate all of that from you.
Next item on the agenda is the ambulance bids.
So, a month or so ago, we put bids out to replace our ambulance. With the understanding delivery and payment would be after July 1st of 2025. Moving forward, unfortunately, this is how we're gonna have to do it from now on to get in line for replacement of anything. The bid, the low bid is the identical bid that we just got our ambulance in service several months ago after over 2 years of waiting for that one. And you can see how much it's increased in price. I don't know what the end is. The figure that they gave of $291,970 will be a bit lower. We don't know what exactly it will be. We get a Ford GPC discount. It runs, it's different every year. Sometimes it's $600, sometimes it's as high as $4,000 or $5,000. So $291,970. The final price will be lower than that. They just don't have it yet from Ford because it's so far out. I spoke with PVC this week, who had the low bid, and with the union strikes and everything, it's gonna set this back probably another 6 months. So at minimum, if we were to order that ambulance today, you're looking at October 2025, almost to April 2026 to get, so not good. So 3 bids were sent out, 1 did not submit a bid. So we run 3 ambulances. Each one runs 4 years. 4-year front line, second line, 3rd year. So every 12 or 13 years, we replace it. So I'd recommend that we go with the low bid and continue the process. I wish I had better news. It's a little disappointing for the price and for the wait.
What year is the one we're replacing again?
For this one is gonna be, I think, 2014, I think. So,
How many miles on it roughly?
that one's got like, right now, 168,000, so.
So it could get us through until this point.
Oh, yes, yeah, yep.
Well, it sounds like it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen.
Yeah, it is. Everything is flipped upside down. It really is. Even dealers don't even have used ambulances for loaners anymore. So and we were talking, Wayne and I were talking, and it's like, God forbid, someone staves up an ambulance, totals it, there's nothing to replace it. So, and it's not just here, it's across the whole country, so. Let's see what happens. What's that?
I know it's probably not what you, is there any used stuff out there?
No, it's all taken up. Used ambulances right now are sell, because no one has them, so. So if you have a breakdown, and say you take it to a shop, they used to have 4 or 5 used ambulances sitting there, so you could utilize one of those while this one's being worked on, not anymore. So there's nothing available, so.
Any questions? Any other questions for Chief Benny?
Just to note that this is on infrastructure's agenda tonight for recommendation to the council, and that depending on your recommendation, it would be on as a resolve at your next meeting. I didn't automatically put one on when we purchase. It generally goes through infrastructure. You make a recommendation, and then if it's a positive recommendation, it goes on the following agenda.
Pleasure of the committee.
Motion to send it. Second council.
All in favor? Against?
For the 291
Yeah.
quote.
Couldn't do the 300. It would have to go.
It's gonna be close to that in the next one.
Yes, it is. Item 5, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?